What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Troutfish Aquatics. Today I want to talk to you guys about how to remove the dreaded blackbeard algae. Alright, so blackbeard algae. If you guys have ever had this in your aquarium, it's long, hair-like algae. It's black in color, sometimes green or grayish. And once you get one little bit in your aquarium, it takes over and covers everything. It's a huge eyesore, and hardly any fish will eat it, and it's very hard to get rid of. It's very stubborn. You can go in and pick all of it out by hand, and within a couple days, it's all over everything in your aquarium again. And if you've ever had it before, you know it is absolutely terrible. There is an exception to it being terrible, and that's if you can get it to grow all on one piece of something and let it grow real long and put it in some current. You know, the hair algae starts moving around and it looks really cool, but to 99% of Aquarius out there, it is a giant PITA, and I'm going to show you guys how to get rid of it. So the first thing that I want to talk about, there's 3 different ways that you can do it. The first one being naturally, and that's with the use of fish. The second one, you can use Flores Excel. The main ingredient in that is Glutaraldehyde, and that is an algicide. Or you can use hydrogen peroxide. So I'm going to talk about those 3 ways you can get rid of it. The first one's going to be the natural way, and that's with the use of tank inhabitants or fish. So the fish that will consume this kind of algae, you're going to be looking at a couple different kinds. You're looking at Siamese algae eaters. Don't confuse those with the Chinese algae eaters. The Chinese algae eaters have a little bit of a sucker mouth, and the Siamese algae eaters just have a regular mouth. Chinese algae eaters won't touch it. Siamese algae eaters will. They'll just go ahead, they'll eat that right up, and you get a nice little school of them in your tank, you know, depending on the size of a 20-gallon, maybe 4 of them, 3-4 of them. In a bigger tank like a 55, maybe want a school of 10. It also depends on how bad the algae problem is. The next fish that I would use is the flying fox. It's very similarly related to and looks very much like the Siamese algae eater, except it also has a golden stripe on it. And that does the same thing. You know, it'll swim around and it'll eat the algae, no big deal. And the other fish that you could put in there to help consume that is going to be mollies. So everyday mollies that you find at Petco, PetSmart, wherever, if you feed them lightly and don't feed as much as you normally would, they will swim around and they will eat that algae to sustain themselves. So those are 3 fairly common fish. The one that you're most likely going to find is going to be mollies. Aside from that, you're really looking at the Siamese algae eaters, and the hardest one to find is going to be the flying fox. But you can go on Aquabid and buy them there too. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is a product called Flores Excel. Many of you are probably aware of it. There's a lot of controversy over this product because it is advertised as liquid CO2, and a lot of new people that are getting into the hobby go, oh, liquid CO2, so I can just pour this stuff in my tank and it works just like having a CO2 injection system. And no, that's not the way this works. The way this works is you pour it in there, and this product is an algicide. So any algae you have in your aquarium, it will kill that. And as a result of your algae not consuming CO2, your plants now have access to more CO2, so they market it as a liquid CO2 product, but it's not, it's just an algicide. And that's Flores Excel. Little side note, when you open this stuff up, it smells like apples, like fresh cut apples. It's weird. But anyway, you can dose this stuff either with the recommended directions on the back, which is just like a capful per 20 gallons. Let me make sure that's right. 1 capful for 50 gallons. My fault, my mistake. And you just dose it like that as a preventative maintenance. Or you can spot treat. And that's the way I do it, is I'll spot treat. So basically what you're going to want to do is you can go to your local pharmacy and you can get a little plastic medicine syringe like this one. This one reads up to 10 milliliters. A capful on here is 5, so this is the equivalent of 2 capfuls. And you can go ahead, take the cap off, stick the syringe in there, and suck up the medicine that you need, or the medicine, the Flores Excel that you need, and then you turn off the filtration in your tank. You turn off any wave makers or power heads or anything like that. You don't want any water current. And then you can just reach down into your tank, and anywhere that you have blackbeard algae, you just inject a little bit of that Flores Excel onto the problem areas, and let it rest for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes before you turn the filtration back on. And what that's going to do is that's going to spot treat. It's going to send that Flores Excel out around the blackbeard algae. It is going to kill the blackbeard algae, and when you turn the current on, it's going to distribute all of the Flores Excel throughout the tank, then working as your preventative maintenance. Now, when you're doing the spot treatments, make sure you do not go over the recommended dosings on the back for the tank size you have. If you have a 50-gallon tank, you only want to use 1 capful's worth in a syringe every time you treat. Make sure you're doing your water changes before you go on and do your next treatment of the Flores Excel. So the next one I want to talk about, and this is the one I use the most because it is the cheapest option, and personally I feel it's the most effective option, and that is hydrogen peroxide. So this bottle of Flores Excel, this is the 500 milliliter bottle, costs about $10, and this bottle, which is 32 fluid ounces, which is 946 milliliters, which is almost twice as much, costs 88 cents. Now this is 3% hydrogen peroxide. Yes, 3% hydrogen peroxide. And I went ahead and attached a spray nozzle to this. Now there's a couple different ways that you can treat this. But the first thing I want to talk about before we get into treatment is hydrogen peroxide is an oxidizer. So what does that mean? So when you get a cut on your hand, right? So you cut your finger, and you take the hydrogen peroxide and you pour it on your finger, it starts foaming and bubbling, right? So what that's doing is it's oxidizing, so burning, any of the organics that have gotten into your skin, into the cut, and on your hand. And the foaming is the hydrogen peroxide, which is H2O2, right? It's losing one of its oxygen ions and just becoming H2O, right? So H2O2 down to H2O. So it's oxidizing the organics in your skin. So hydrogen peroxide will do the same thing in your aquarium. So anywhere you look this up online, the average dosing for this is 3 milliliters per gallon. Max. Okay? I do not dose that heavy. I dose 1 milliliter per gallon for the specific reason, and I recommend 1 milliliter per gallon, for the specific reason of it all depends on how much organics is in your water. What do I mean by that? So if you are using reverse osmosis water, or RODI, your organics in your water is going to be much, much lower than somebody who uses tap water. Now, organics, if you've ever heard of the term TDS, total dissolved solids, that's a measurement of how much organics is in your water. So if your TDS rating is 10 because you have RODI water, this is much more potent to all the inhabitants of the tank and the algae, which is why you don't want to use as much. Now, if you're using tap water and have a TDS of 400 or 500, like I do, then this you could use a little bit more because it's going to be breaking down all of those other solids that are in your tank and all those other organics before it gets to the algae. Which is why I only recommend 1 milliliter per gallon. So, how do you find out how many milliliters are per squirt, right? So go ahead and get an API kit test tube, which most of you should have these laying around. If you don't, make sure you get a liquid test kit. It's definitely more accurate than the strips. Not a whole lot more accurate, but it is more accurate, and you get way more tests out of the liquid kit than you do test strips for about the same price, if not cheaper. So what I'll do, right, is the line on here is 5 milliliters. So you just take the squirt, And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 squirts for me is 5 milliliters. Right? So, that being the case, I know that each squirt on this is less than 1 milliliter. So I won't use any more squirts than gallons of my aquarium. If I've got a 5-gallon tank, I won't use any more than 5 sprays. Okay? Now, that's if you're going to drain the water on your tank. So, say on this 5-gallon, I lowered the level. That way the plants and rocks are exposed. And then I take this and spray it onto the blackbeard algae, let it rest a minute, and then fill the tank back up. That's how I would treat with the spray. Now, the other ways you can treat this is you can mix hydrogen peroxide with water to a 50-50 ratio, right? And dip your plants in it. So if you have live plants, dip just the leaves, not the roots, into the mixture, the 50-50 mixture, for a couple seconds, maybe 15, 20, 30 seconds, and then pull them back out and immediately put them in clean water. So what that's going to do is it's going to break down the simple cells of the algae, and it won't injure the plants, but it will kill the algae. Now, the exception to that rule is be very careful with simple cell plants like jungle val, anacarus, hornwort, things like that. If you're not sure which plants are simple cell, go on Google, look it up, you'll be able to find it. It's very easy to do so. And be very, very cautious treating hydrogen peroxide and Flores Excel with those plants. I have killed my plants before using this and that. So use caution. The other thing you could do is spot treat the same way that you spot treat with Flores Excel. Syringe it up, spray the affected areas, let it rest, and then turn your circulation back on. So those are the ways that I treat blackbeard algae. So what I'm going to do is I have some blackbeard algae I've been growing in one of my tanks for a little while now, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to show you guys how I treat that using the hydrogen peroxide and the Flores Excel. Okay, so I'm out of the 55-gallon tank that's in my kitchen. Excuse the mess in here. We were doing a little bit of reorganizing for the holidays, so stuff is kind of just pushed off to the sides. But if I can get the camera close enough here, see if I can zoom in, or get you guys close enough, you can see all that blackbeard algae. Now, it's probably about a ½ inch long. You can see it's kind of swirling around with the water flowing by it. And I got a bunch of it all over the place. It's all over the plants. It's on the intake for that filter there. It's on the airline tube that runs up to the top of the tank there. It's all over this filter intake. This tank is pretty well plagued with it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to do the spot treatment with the Glutaraldehyde from the Flores Excel. And what I've done is I've dosed, there's just a little bit, there's only 3 milliliters in this syringe right now, so nowhere near the recommended dosing. And I'm going to turn off all the circulation in the tank, and then I'm going to spot treat this section right over here. So I'm going to get the camera closer, we'll spot treat it, and we'll let it sit for a couple minutes. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to use the hydrogen peroxide dip method. I have a bowl with some water in here. I'm going to add some hydrogen peroxide to it. We're going to dip a plant, let it rest for a couple seconds, about 30 seconds. Now these are fake plants, so you can leave them in there a lot longer. I'm only going to do about 30 seconds, and then I'm going to return it to the tank. And then I'm also going to take another one of the plants out, which would simulate me draining the water level down, which is going to take too long for the video. But drain the water level down, spray it down with the hydrogen peroxide, let it rest about 30-40 seconds, and then fill the tank back up, put the plant back in, right? So those are going to be the 3 methods. You're going to have the spot treatment, you're going to have the dip, and you're going to have the spray, and we're going to show you how that all works. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off the current in the tank, which I just have everything hooked up to a surge. I'm just going to unplug the filters because I need the light on. Okay, so everything's off now. Let's see if I can't get you guys in close enough for this. Okay, So here is the blackbeard algae that I'm going to be treating. It is this stuff right here on this plant in the very front. Here's the syringe. I'm just going to open the top, reach in there, and give it a spray. Just reach right in there. Okay. So that's the spot treatment for that. Now, for this particular treatment, you probably aren't going to see results for a day or two, because it does take a lot longer to kill the blackbeard algae using this method. So when it dies, it's going to turn a reddish color or a light gray color. And that's how you're going to know that that blackbeard algae has been killed. Now, for the other methods, let me get the tripod set back up here. There we go. The other methods, I'm just going to take the plants out. I'm going to show you the dip, and then I'm going to take another plant out, and I'm going to spray it, and then I'll show you guys that. We'll put them back into the tank, and then I'm going to turn the video off, and then we'll come back a little bit later and look at them and see what the results are. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to take the hydrogen peroxide. And I'm going to add it to the water, about 50-50. Put my spray nozzle back in there. Okay. So now I have the dip set up. Turn the camera here. There's the bowl. So I'm going to reach in and grab one of these plants. I'll take this one right here. Now when you take the plant with the blackbeard algae out, I'm going to show you guys. You can see it's got this thick black stuff. That is the blackbeard algae. So all you're going to do is take the affected parts and just dip them right into the bowl. So while that's soaking, I'm going to go ahead and grab another plant here. This one I'm just going to lay on top so that it is not into the water. The affected areas are not in the water. And I'm going to take the spray and I'm going to spray them down. We're just going to let that sit. Now I wasn't doing full sprays on that, they were just little tiny ones, so I'm not too worried about it. So I'm going to let that sit in there for a couple seconds, about 30-40 seconds. I'm not going to fill that full amount of time. So I'm going to turn the camera off, we'll come back in about a minute, and I'll show you me putting them back into the tank, and then I'm going to show you guys, probably about 15 minutes from now, what they look like. Okay, so it's been about a minute. I'm going to go ahead and take these plants now and put them back into the tank, and then I'm going to let them rest for a little while until they start changing colors, and then I'll show you guys what that looks like when they change colors so that you know you've killed the blackbeard algae. So I'm going to start off with the one that's on top of the bowl. Here's the bowl here. This is the one that we sprayed. It was not resting in the liquid in the bowl at all. So I'm going to put this one over here by the filter. And then this one that was resting in the 50-50 solution, I'm going to put back over by the other plants. Now, there is a way to tell to see if this stuff is dead before it changes color, and that's if you grab a hold of the blackbeard algae and pull on it. If it comes off like that, that's usually a good sign that it is dead. So we're just going to put it back in. Okay, so that's pretty much that. The plants are back in there. And the one thing I'm noticing right away is this algae that is currently in here that I just put in from the treatment is much darker red than the stuff that's already in the tank. So that's a very good sign that this algae is now dead. And over the next half hour or so, you're really going to see it turn. And at that point, the goldfish, or when I put the Placosmus back in here, they'll be able to eat it right off the plants, and no big deal. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. That's how you can treat your blackbeard algae. And right after I'm done talking here, I'm going to roll some B-roll to show you that it's dead. But until then, I will see you guys in the next video. Alright guys, so it's been about 5 minutes since I filmed, and I just wanted to get a little bit of B-roll here to show you guys what this stuff is going to look like when it starts dying on you. Now, if you look at this blackbeard algae up on the top up here, you can see it's kind of greenish, blackish gray, right? And now if we come over to the stuff that we treated, which are these two plants over here on the left, right? If you look at the very tops of the algae, they're starting to turn red, which means that that algae is dying. It's much more so red on this plant here. You can see the top of that one is very red, and it's starting to get red over on the other side. That is a very good indication that that algae is dying. So once that algae has completely died, the entire algae will be red, and at that point it will just fall off the plant and your fish can eat it, and that's it. So that's how you get rid of blackbeard algae.